Today is my last day of being 58 years old. Tomorrow I turn 59, and just saying that number, it's almost like there's part of me that can't even compute or can't even comprehend that I will be 59 years old. And I think the reason for that is, like many of you, I think we grow up and we have these ideals as we are younger, and then growing up and we see people ahead of us. We have these ideas and perceptions about what these people feel like when they're 30 and when they're 40 and they're 50 and 60, 70, on and on. And when we hit those chronological age markers, there's part of us then that expects to feel and our lives to look like what we perceived the people ahead of us, their lives to look like, and what they felt and how they thought about their life and all of those things. So what has been interesting to me as I've gotten older, and it's not just been in the last few decades, I realized it all along the way. So I'm sure many of you that are watching this have come to this realization that when you reach those markers, you don't feel like you thought you were going to feel. And it's like you have to kind of catch up to that in some ways, or at least for me. So a couple of months ago, I had an idea. I thought, while I'm still 58, what if I look back and look at my 8-year-old self, my 18-year-old self, my 28-year-old self, my 38-year-old self, 48, and now 58-year-old self. What would I like to tell her? What would I like to tell Susan, or Susan Beth, as I was called when I was younger, that I have now gone back to for a lot of different reasons? What would I like to tell her? And when I was thinking about this video, I had a special outfit that I wanted to wear, kind of like it was going to be like kind of a birthday celebration thing. So I had this outfit that I was going to wear. I knew the earrings I was going to wear. Had it all planned out, and was very excited about it. And along the way, the past few weeks, I was jotting down notes that would come to my mind about the different seasons of my life and those different decades, things that came to my mind. But yet, I just still wasn't nailing everything down. So I'm going to be very real and honest, because at the end of the day, that's exactly how I want to be. Even though I feel that way at times, but then sometimes when it gets down to it, I'm like, no. When I'm actually feeling vulnerable, it's like, then I don't want to do what I had set out to do. I was surprised at how the emotions that have come up, and I have gone back and forth about actually recording this video. And the reason for that is I'm feeling some intense emotions, and I wasn't thinking of this as necessarily an intense video. Like I said, I was like even thinking of a little glass, want to have my iced coffee, and it be more celebratory. I mean, yes, encouraging and helpful. That was the point too. Maybe shed some insight, but definitely more of a fun tone. And not that I don't think it's going to be fun. We're always going to have fun. But it has been quite the journey. And if you've noticed, no cute outfit, basic silver earrings. The closer I got to it and was feeling all these things, I was like, you know what? This feels kind of raw and real. And it's like, I just kind of wanted to, my everyday life, you'll either find me wearing black pants, black t-shirt, or denim, some sort of denim. That's my go-to. I do like other things that I occasionally wear, and I love those. But I love denim and being comfy. And this is kind of what it felt like I wanted it to be today. I wanted it to feel like I'm talking to you, because that was the intention, to share something that would be encouraging to you along the way, and that you maybe would see yourself in one of my decades. You might be in your 20s watching this. 30s, 40s, you might be a young mom raising kids and feeling all the pressures that brings. You might be single. You might be an empty nester. You might, for whatever reason, relate, and even if you don't relate, because I think all of our stories are different, I think that's where we get hung up sometimes, because then we start comparing and all the stories. So my intention is not necessarily to bring you into all the details of my life per se, but it is, but I do want to share some things in the hopes that you will see and be encouraged for your story in something that I share today. And I had some ideas in how I wanted to share looking back at the different decades, but I was kind of still trying to process that out. And the more I was thinking about it and the more I was trying to figure it out and it be this whole thing that I had envisioned in my mind, that was kind of making me, that was kind of adding to it, trying to figure all that out. So that's why I was just kind of like, you know what? I'm just going to share from the heart and share what came up, and we'll go from there. So when I was thinking back of when I look at my 8-year-old self, and I think I might insert a picture or something or have it at the beginning or something. My 8-year-old self, I think about, and it wasn't necessarily 8 years old, but kind of talking about when I say the decade age, it's kind of like the time leading up to that is what I'm thinking of. I can vividly remember, and I've talked about this in one of the recent seasonal journals. I can remember laying in bed at night and thinking about God, the God that created everything that I could see, everything that I knew to be true. And this wasn't just a couple of time occurrence in my life. I mean, I think that's why it stands out to me. I can just remember, I mean, it could have been nightly. I just remember so many times falling asleep to trying to comprehend and understand the vastness of this God. I was so intrigued in wanting to know and to understand him. And I guess in some ways, wanting to understand my part in this story that I believe to be true, that there was a God that created all that is, and also created me and designed me and who I am. And so I could just remember from a young age, a lot of my thoughts and time drifting off to sleep was contemplating and thinking about this God that I desired to know and to understand so much. And when I think back and see me as a little girl laying in bed, it's what I would long to say to my younger self is keep pressing in, keep asking the questions, keep leaning in, because one day, and actually along the way, you're going to discover that this God that you have such love and longing for is so much bigger than you ever even imagined. That the little girl that laid there in bed and just thought of this vast, big God up in the sky, of how it was how I envisioned him, that he's so much bigger and he loves you so much more than you ever even imagined. And I've written down some notes, so I'm going to kind of reference the different thoughts that came to my mind when I was thinking about the different decades. And another thing in that decade, I wanted to say as I look back, that the hours that you spend creating storylines and singing and inviting others into that experience, those things in your heart that you have a desire to share will only expand as you grow older. The details and the understanding that you search for in your childlike mind never stops. And one day you'll look back over the years and the seasons of your life, and you will be blown away at the love and the faithfulness as you see God in your story. The next mile marker was 18 years old. And the first thing I wrote down was, "You're so restless and you don't understand why." I can remember that. I love having the opportunity that I have now in my life to still connect with the younger generation. And I tell them often, it's like I can look at them, I can remember the feelings that I had when I was their age. And so I say 18, but right, we're moving into that whole season, into the 20s. And I can just remember this restlessness that I felt, and I didn't understand why. And what I wanted to say to that person, I mean, to that version of me, was, I see you being brave and initiating vulnerable conversations with mentors and leaders in your life, hoping for insight and direction. One day, years down the road, you will finally realize that no one is going to give you permission to be who God made you to be. And even if they did, it wouldn't change anything until you realize that the God that breathed life and purpose into you from the start has given you all the permission that you'll ever need. You experience so much change in this decade that in many ways had you reeling. The first being your family moving across the country after your high school graduation, which had you not only packing up your things for college, but packing up everything for your family to move it to a new city and state, to a home that you wouldn't see for months. This wasn't a great start for your college experience, as you felt very ungrounded and lost. Your adventurous spirit kept fun close, but underneath all the fun and laughs was sadness. Feeling stuck in a bubble that oftentimes felt fake and lifeless. No one in your orbit, and not really anywhere, were people talking about depression openly at that time. So it wouldn't be until later that you realized the struggle that you were living in those years. Well, fast forward. You met Ron when you were 20 and married by 21. You felt alive and at home from the first conversation, which he still jokes has been a never-ending conversation that still continues to this day. You'll come to understand decades later why, as a surprise to you, you had such a visceral response at the DMV office when you were legally changing your name. You were caught off guard and confused when your eyes welled up with tears when you were so excited about marrying Ron and your future together. You now understand that the body holds and eventually reveals what the mind necessarily can't process in the moment. But it wouldn't be for a while, because as a young married couple, you quickly moved into ministry leadership roles within local churches. And because of your age, you took on acting much older than you felt. And as much as you loved and were comfortable in these settings because it was familiar and all you had ever known, and there was so much and there were so many beautiful things within that, and so much growth that would take place, you found yourself living more into the roles that you held than your true identity and who you were. 28. I wrote, life is a beautiful blur. And that is exactly when I think back to this decade. It can feel like a blur because there was just so much to it. I wrote, you're building your family and your life, and it's hard and it's beautiful. I've shared with you guys before this particular story that happened after I'd had all 5 children. So I had my 2 daughters, then there were a few years in between, and then I had my last 3 children, my 3 sons, in less than 4 years. And I can remember at the end of one day, sitting on the couch in our living room after the kids had been put to bed, and through my tears expressing all of my overwhelm to my husband, Ron. And as I poured out my heart to him and just how life was so hard, he looked at me, and with a smile, he kind of looked at me and he said, It's what you always wanted. And I'll never forget it because my husband can be, as I can, a little smart aleck. It was a beautiful smile. And it was such a reminder to me of the truth of what he was saying. A lot of my childhood was spent me playing with my baby dolls and dreaming of having a house full of kids like I grew up in and like my husband did. And he was right. I that's what I wanted. I wanted lots of babies. I wanted a full house, and I wanted the days that I was living. And he ever so kindly looked back at me that day and reminded me of that. And even though it kind of was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, um, it didn't sting. It was a beautiful reminder that I've never forgotten because I was living the days that I dreamed of and that I desired and that I wanted. I think the reminder that I would love to speak into you if you find yourself in these days. And it might not be that you have a house full of kids, it might be another season of life that feels overwhelming and you feel kind of confused because you feel like this is what you were working for and what you wanted. And so you don't understand why you feel like you feel. I first off want to say, feel the feelings. I think even though people around me would say I showed emotion and was an emotional person, I fought them. So yes, they did come out, but I fought those feelings because I felt like they were wrong and that I shouldn't be feeling those. So I say feel the feelings and talk to somebody about them. And if you don't have anybody to talk to, what I have found that's better than even talking to an actual human, I mean, I think that has its place, but talking to your creator. And I say this a lot in my sharing and in my journals that our God knows us better than we know ourselves, and even your best friend that you might be talking to. And so we're taking on things from our perspective when we are just thinking things in our mind, or we're talking them out with people that love us and maybe giving us advice that's not great or telling us what they think we want to hear that might make us feel better. When we have access to the God of the universe and Holy Spirit that leads us and guides us into all truth and is not scared of our feelings and our doubts and our questions, and will lead us so tenderly through the seasons of our life, when we will show up authentically and be real and be honest with how we're feeling and allow God to do the work in our life to grow us and grow us into who He designed us to be from the start. And so I would just love to encourage you that if you find yourself in that spot where you feel overwhelmed and exasperated by life, and it feels exhausting thinking of the next day and the next week, yet it's what you've been working towards and moving towards. I want to encourage you to invite God into that moment and allow the Holy Spirit to reveal truth to you. And maybe a pivot is needed. Maybe there's some practical things that can be done to lighten the load and help make things more manageable. And maybe there's things in your heart and your mind that you need to release. And I know for me, that was a big thing of carrying the weight of perfectionism or perceptions. And I've shared this with my daughters, even in raising our kids. That is a regret that I have, of allowing opinions or what I think others might be thinking to steal my joy and to steal my peace. And one thing, when I was thinking about at this age, that I am proud of, that I wrote down, I thought, I'm proud of you for going against the grain and creating the family and the home life and raising your kids the way you wanted to, even when you were questioned about it. And this was a while back. So a lot of things are more mainstream now that I was choosing to do. And I don't regret that. And I didn't do that perfectly. And I know that I knew that then and I know that now. But even within all of the imperfection, my heart was for home base and my team at home, and to the best of my ability, that's what I strove to do, is to be committed and to show up for my family and to create the atmosphere that I wanted my home to be, and that was always a top priority. So if that's you, when God speaks something to your heart and you feel so strongly about it, stand in that. And even if others don't understand your choices or decisions, and maybe you don't even fully understand them yet, it's something you feel so deep in your heart and your spirit, have the courage to stand. 38. You've grown so much, but it's like a secret that you hold safe. You still sweetly smile and accept total BS from strong, controlling, and spiritual voices in your life. One day, you will be strong enough to say no more, and these voices won't have access to your heart. You're strong enough now, you just don't believe you are. You stay in rooms you were never meant to be in, and one day, you will have the courage to walk out. 48. What a mix this decade is. Some of your children have, and others are moving into adulthood. And it's so rewarding experiencing life with them in this season and watching them grow and develop into everything that God has for them. Your health is going to demand your attention in ways that you didn't see coming. It will take all you have some days to function and move ahead as you desperately seek answers and solutions to finding healing. This journey is going to last longer than you imagined, yet it's going to walk you into healing and wholeness like you've never known. I wrote these two words that, to me, are key words for this decade. I put trust and perseverance because, like I just said, this journey of healing that has spread into all that I am has not been a instantaneous healing. And that's been a gift in many ways because, as life is for most of us, there's so many layers of things in our life. And even though I know we serve a God that can instantaneously bring healing and do whatever is needed, whenever and however, most of the time we walk out our healing and we work out our salvation. And I don't know that the wholeness and the healing that I've experienced would be as deep and as fruitful as I feel like it has been if it had been quicker and on my timetable. And so I've had to learn trust in a different way. And that has been, let me say, easier to some extent, as in this season of my life, looking back and seeing the faithfulness of God to me, I trust God in such a deep and fuller way than I did in previous decades, where my eye was so focused on what I thought I wanted that I was not willing and able to receive what God had for me and what was so readily wanting to give me. But because I wanted and expected my desires, what I was saying I wanted, to look differently, I wasn't open to receiving what God had for me, which I now see and understand was the desires of my heart. And I've talked about this before. I think this is a tricky thing for us because I know for myself, I struggled with the desires of my heart and felt frustrated at God in the 38, the 48, probably those decades. Felt very frustrated. God, I feel like I, with my whole heart, am trying to follow you and to live the life that I feel like you've called me to. And yet I felt like the desires of my heart and my prayers fell on deaf ears with God. And now I clearly see that all along God was giving me the desires of my heart because he truly understood what the desires of my heart were. For one, he's the one who put them there. But those desires, I had them wrapped in a certain thing, them playing out in certain ways and looking certain ways. But really the core of the desire were a lot richer and a lot fuller of what I really wanted, what made me feel alive and my deep desire. But I was looking for evidence of those desires being met by what I thought that was supposed to look like, which let me say, I did experience some of those things that I prayed for, and they didn't give me that. They didn't meet that desire, but I had given it importance of obtaining something and was looking to certain evidences of things that I was putting my hand to fulfill and to bring maybe validation or something and the wholeness I was seeking within myself, which it never did. So it was this endless striving and trying to feel something within me that was never going to happen. And it wasn't until later seasons that I could look back and see that I was reaching and trying to grasp and to hold on to the wrong things that were not life giving and they were not the true desires of my heart that God had placed within me. So I said the two things I wrote: trust and perseverance. So trust that God is faithful, and then perseverance to keep going even when you're not sure of the next step or what's next, because God is faithful, and God, I have learned, is in the moment. Okay. And culture wants us to feel like we're behind. We need to be here. We need to be doing this and all the things. And when we get caught up in that, which is where most of us, if we're honest, can spend a lot of time, that's where we get worn out. That's where we step out of living the life and being true to who we truly are because we're trying to keep up with somebody else, or we're trying to do this or do that. And even when those things are good and bring joy to us, we can get off track because they're not ultimately the purposes that God has for us. We've kind of latched ourselves onto somebody else and kind of got going a different way. So trust and persevere and keep moving forward on God's timetable for your life, because he's never behind, which means you're never behind and you're right where you need to be. I wrote down Mimi. In this decade, I became a Mimi. And looking back when I was writing these down, I thought how beautiful that the gift of these precious grandbabies came at a time when I was in the middle of this health journey, that the new life and the joy that they brought to our family, I'm sure, I know, no doubt influenced and breathed life into me when I definitely needed it. Even though I'm still on the healing journey, those earlier years were definitely so hard. So there's no doubt that the gift of these now 6 grandchildren, but when this started, the decade that my children started having their children was such a gift in a time when I needed new life and a reminder of the goodness and things ahead, that there was so much to look forward to and still so much life to live. And so what a gift that I know. I mean, I lived it, I experienced it at the time, but in looking back, I was like, wow, it feels like such a gift that grandchildren came at such a hard time for me physically in my life. At the start, I had mentioned how different life feels than I thought it was going to feel. And even though I can say that for each decade, I have to say that the decade of my 50s have been the most exciting, the most transformative, all the words, decade of my life thus far. And in some ways, my life has, I feel like my life has changed so much than even the previous decade before. And yet I don't feel necessarily, I'm trying to think how to say this. I don't feel the weight of that change. You know how sometimes you go through change and it's like your life feels like, whoa, you're like, oh, my life feels so different. And you feel the change so intensely. That's been my last decade. Life has changed and looks so differently, but I don't feel like I feel it in the way that people might perceive it, because it feels like I'm home. I feel so much who I am. And I was thinking back, and I'd written down when I was writing the notes in the previous decade, I'd written like, your life becomes this natural outflow of all that is in your heart. Where you once were only comfortable using your voice and hand to hold a microphone and sing, your whole life has become a song of worship. And that's what I feel. At 58 years old, I've never felt more alive, more myself, more whole, and more expectant of what is to come. And I was going to say, and that surprises me, but it doesn't surprise me from the last decade. It surprises me from how I thought I would be feeling at this point in my life, which is totally different. And that is so exciting. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. I wanted to share one last thought that I jotted down that I would love to go back and speak over that child, that when I was laying in bed and all the thoughts I had toward the vastness of this God that I so desperately longed to connect with and to know and to be known by. I wrote down, you're still captivated by this God that you feel so seen and loved and known by in and out of every moment of your day. And that's what I feel. That's what I feel. Here's what I want you to take away from this, from my birthday reflections. I want you to know you have a God that designed and knit you together to be so uniquely exactly who you are. And when you show up as you are, you image your Creator and you bring him delight, and you bring forth the beauty and the goodness of your Creator into the world, and you reveal who your God is simply by being you, by who he designed and created you to be. And here is the last thing that I want you to remember. So I hope you're still here watching this. It's never too late. It is never too late, no matter which decade you find yourself in and that you relate to. It's never too late. It doesn't matter what detour you might have taken, what side road, what back road, what cliff you might have driven off of. None of it matters. And here's why. because you serve a faithful God that is going to be faithful to you and the purposes that He has for you from the start. You can't mess it up. You can turn away from it, but you can't mess it up. You can keep saying yes. And that's what I want to encourage you today, that no matter where your life might have taken you, because here's the beautiful thing. There were so many days, so many weeks, so many times that I had regret and thought I took the wrong turn. And I had regret and thought time's wasted. And I used to kind of I didn't really get when people say I have no regrets because it's got me to where I am today. I used to always be kind of like, okay, sounds good. You're just trying to make yourself feel better. But I get it now. I get it because I am who I am because of those seasons and those days that weren't necessarily my favorite. I don't know that I would have pushed through like I did and kept moving forward like I did and seen the faithfulness of God in my life. And here's the thing. God is no respecter of persons, and what He's done for me, He'll do for you. God is in your story, and look back to the seasons of your life and take notice of how He has led you, where He's shown up for you, and maybe where you ignored where He was leading and you decided to take your own way. But He's faithful. And as I'm moving in tomorrow, I'll wake up and I will be 59, and I'm happy about it. I'm happy about it. And I want you to be happy about whatever age you are and whatever season you're in. Your God is right there with you. And I'm excited about turning 59. And thanks for listening to my birthday reflection. And I hope that maybe something I shared resonated with you and will be encouraging and you'll find it helpful. So anyway, we'll talk soon and love you guys.